Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. My name is Leonard Brackett. This is the Belizean Affairs Show number 379. We're grateful for your um, attendance tonight. For those of you who will be listening to us live and direct, and also for those who are listening to our programs on the platforms, the various platforms on which we broadcast at your own timing. Of course, it's the Christmas season, so people will be busy running around here and there, to and fro, up and down, taking care of last minute issues in order to be able to enjoy their holiday seasons. I wish you all God's blessings. Merry Christmas, and I wish you also a Happy New Year. God's blessings and your family's appreciation and contentment together. Of course, being Christmas Eve tonight, later on, or today, as a matter of fact, being Christmas Eve, I will end up being the chairman for tonight's program as well as your Santa for the night. So whatever I bring tonight will be a speedy delivery from Santa Claus, not in his sleigh, but on the airwaves. And I just want to say, in the jest of merrymaking and happiness, thank you again for tuning in to us. I'll just do the preliminaries for the program, which is to say a short prayer and then do a short reading as well. And then we'll get into the merrymaking for tonight. Uh, I'll bow my head for a minute. Divine loving Father, again we come before thy presence asking that thou would accept our humble expression of gratitude and thankfulness for having granted us the privilege of life first and foremost, and secondly for having given us the opportunity to be alive today among our family members, friends, and loved ones, heading into a celebratory mood. Of course, we know that without thy divine guidance and grace, we are but nothing but to be cast into the river of perdition, for we do not merit thy divine blessings other than because of thy Son Jesus Christ who died on Calvary's cross for our redemption. Please let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our mind and the contriteness of our hearts be acceptable before thy divine presence, now and always. We pray that thou mayest bless our family members, friends, and loved ones wherever they are, thou knowest them by name and number. Please continue to be merciful unto them. Please also bless our country of Belize, its people and leadership. And please bless this country of the United States, its people and leadership as well. And the rest of humanity, please be with us, Lord. For thou knowest the travails and tribulations that we are presently undergoing. Please continue to be merciful unto us, I pray, and help that whatever I have to say tonight during the course of this program, may it be to the honor and glory of thy kingdom as well as to the rest and benefit of humanity, and in particular to our Belizeans at home and abroad. Thank you very much. God bless. Always. I'll do a short reading as we normally do, as I previously indicated. And for tonight, we're going to go into one of the books of the New Testament, and the first one I came across here was the book of Matthew. So I'll start reading at chapter 7, and it says, Judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure you mete, it shall be measured unto you again. Verse 3, And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but consider it not the beam that is in thine own eyes? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, Let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, And behold, a beam is in thine own eye. That being the scripture that I came across as I opened the book. I'll put in context that scripture to what I had intended to take up for tonight, and that is that, yes, we're not supposed to gratuitously judge people, but if we have a constitution that is in black and white telling us what the rules and the laws of our country is, then by all means or any manner, that is the basis for our passing any judgment on ourselves or anyone else in our society. There are laws that our societies are governed by, whether it be a society of communists, socialists, kleptocrats, uh, we say, uh, let's take, for example, here in the United States, the society is supposed to be based on a democratic society, Republican democratic society, a republic of democratic society, and the system of governance also is beholden to the form of economic development and survival, which is under the term of capitalism. Of course, you have benign capitalism as well as uh, malignant capitalism. So it's all a matter of who is running the system, who is being given the privilege to sit at the head of the table and or to win the elections in whichever country you're residing. Those individuals are then empowered with the power of law making as well as uh, abiding by the laws that governs the country. In our instance, we have been dealing with some issues in our country as regards to the PCC Act and the PCC, which is a commission, constitutional commission, under fabricated guise as per the Prime Minister's directive that that commission constitute the People's Commission. I do not recall anywhere in the history of our country, which includes up to today's date, that the people ask for our government, especially the particular government in place right now, to take onto itself the agenda of altering in a massive way to the point of even eviscerating our current constitution. That power is not vested in the government to arbitrarily and capriciously do because it says whenever, according to our current constitution, we could have one constitution at a time. And according to the present constitution, it says whenever the government wants to derogate and or take away or deny any of the rights of the people, those rights which are found in Section 3 all the way through Section 19, inclusive of the Constitution of Belize, and for protection of those rights, Section 20 for judicial review, as well as Section 94 and 95, empowering the court with ultimate jurisdiction, unlimited jurisdiction, whereby the court, as a separate branch of government, one of the third branches of government, is not to be subjugated and or controlled by by the judiciary is supposed to control the court and not the executive or the legislative. Each of these separate branches of government have their own empowered authority vested by the Constitution itself. Um, just give me a second here, please. Let me yeah, just let me turn on a couple of things here for the other individuals who might be looking forward to hearing our program for tonight and what we have to offer. I'd like to just spare a few minutes here to launch the other part of our program so they can participate or at least get to hear. Thank you for your kind and gracious, um, I would say, attentiveness, and I put that on live already now, so that's good to go. And I'm coming back now to the program itself. Um, it is important for us as Belizeans to try and know and learn as much as we can about our constitution because that is the guide and the measure by which we are able to tell or interpret or judge as for the reading that I just did, which says that we're not supposed to be judging. Of course, that's in a different context than the context that I'm presenting this program tonight. That is to say, we're not supposed to, the way the scripture that I read interprets that point is that we're not supposed to look at just any and everybody that we come across or just meet and without any cursory knowledge or understanding of who they are, what they proclaim to be, or on the basis of our surmising, just arbitrarily and capriciously assume that these people, based on our judgment, are something else other than what they really are. That is to say, pass malicious or false judgment. But when you're going to have people that are committing crimes, there's no way that you cannot be attentive to those crimes and even in the interest of your own self-preservation, be aware of the fact that you have to be careful and cautious how you navigate around those individuals who have tendencies of criminality or criminal mentality or behavior or conduct. Otherwise, you leave yourself exposed and you're misinterpreting what the scripture is saying. You're not supposed to be just gratuitously and wantonly misstate the truth and or lie about somebody when in fact the truth of the matter is that as human beings we all have our own individual frailties. One person's frailty may not be that of another, or another person's frailty may not be that of someone else, or the someone else's frailty may not be that of mine. But if those individuals behave in such a way that is antisocial or illegal or immoral or outside of the context of societal norms, it is for us to then take note and caution, which is why you have laws that govern countries. And in our case, we have a series of laws which we call the constitution of the country, as many other countries do have. And it is expected that those whom we entrust the authority of governance to lead and govern our country on our behalf, by the way, not on their behalf, because when you give these powers, authorize these powers through the election process to these various individuals, it is not that they should take those powers and just arbitrarily and capriciously use it at their own heart content and dismiss the purpose for that power being granted for their use. They are supposed to use those powers on behalf of the country. So when you see them not using those powers on behalf of the country and the country is languishing economically, socially, politically, educationally, and in many other respects, then you have to be concerned, you have to ask questions, you have to do research, you have to study and compare what's happening. Despite the fact that you might have your own personal faults, you then can't say, well, because you have personal faults, that you're not in a position to be able to observe, rationalize, or understand where the failures of governance lie, or who is causing it, or how to remedy it. So for tonight's program, my intention was to bring to the attention of the public again part of the same a series of lectures we have been conducting now for at least a couple of years, and because we have had to deal with so many other travesties over the last couple of years, we were unable to dedicate the necessary time to complete this exercise in terms of what the PCC undertaking was supposed to be about and how our participation in the process would help for the educational campaign, which the government and the people that they gave them millions of dollars to perform that function failed miserably in not performing that function, but yet are attempting to tell us that as much as what they did should be enough, and therefore, if we didn't learn anything enough about the Constitution, then maybe it is our fault. So now they're going to blame the people for not knowing enough, but still expect the people that if they follow the mandates of the Constitution and create a referendum on these constitutional changes that they are planning to make or proposing to make, that then it's left to the people in their state of ignorance to just go ahead and vote and accept whatever is it that is being recommended by the government. That's unfortunate. That's a travesty unto itself, because that's not the way it's supposed to be. That's not the way it's intended. That's not the way the Constitution prescribed for it to be. But when you're dealing with shysters, ill will, messed up minded people, then you got to do some more homework on your own. And so tonight becomes one of those what I call teachable moments in regards to the pursuit of this PCC clarification to the general public. There are some whom may know enough about what's going on behind the scene and could care less, but then there are many others who have not been given the opportunity to learn or know. And that doesn't mean that we're all supposed to just sit back and let everybody fend for themselves. The PCC, which is the People's Constitution Commission, was put together initially by the Prime Minister under a different name. Back then, it used to be the Constitution Reform Commission. That is CRC, Constitution Reform Commission. And because they were getting a lot of flack for how they were behaving and conducting that process, they decided to change the name, go to the House, pass an act in the House in order to enable them to get a few $1 million to sponsor their agenda. Now, like I said initially, nobody asked these gentlemen or these people to go and mess around with the Constitution, tamper with it, modify it, or change it to make it any worse than it currently is. If ever, or at least in any instance, if they had any good faith towards the people and country, they are already empowered to make certain modifications of the Constitution. They don't even have to come to the people to have some of those changes made. They are already empowered to make those changes. But then there are other parts of the Constitution that they are not empowered to tamper with without coming to the people with a plebiscite. As it is said in the people's what's the name? Oh, I forgot the name. But it is said that there shall be a referendum if the government wishes to derogate or tamper with any of those particular rights. But now they are writing it here in black and white as a proposal for them to go ahead and tamper with those rights. That's how audacious, that's how bold-faced these people are. They're telling you what they're going to do because you dare to give them the powers that they believe they have so that they can go ahead and bamboozle the people into let the people believe that the powers that are granted to them is sufficient for them to be able to just go and arbitrarily make those changes on their own. When the Constitution is telling them if they want to tamper with or deal with any of those matters, they got to come to the people as in a plebiscite and with a referendum. The bogus PCC Act that they created stipulates that if the PCC Commission does not give them enough of what they thought is necessary or worthy enough of their um, taking the matter directly to the Congress, what they will do is just arbitrarily and capriciously dismiss or dispense with whatever part of that recommendation that the PCC makes, and within the authority of the Prime Minister to make proposals to the House of Representatives for lawmaking purposes, they will just go ahead and make whatever changes they want in the law. Not only is that bad faith, based on what they had said before, that they was going to follow the Constitution and do the right thing, but it's just arbitrary and capricious and unlawful at that. Let me read for you. Well, I won't read it. I'll just quote it because we've been reading it regularly, and by now I believe, but I hope that most people understand and remember. Section 2 of the Constitution of Belize says, the Constitution, this Constitution, meaning the Constitution we're referring to, Constitution of Belize, is the supreme law of the land. And if any other law is inconsistent with this current Constitution, the current Belize Constitution, if any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution, then that other law, to the extent of its inconsistencies, is null. Basically, is void. Basically, is unlawful, it's illegal, and it's unconstitutional. But they're proposing here to make some constitutional changes, according to them, that because they make those changes, it will amount to legal, lawful, and constitutional law and replace the Constitution itself. Let's read a part of the stuff. Which one of them is okay? I will go to part 5, which says the executive. That is part 5 of the recommendations that were made by the PCC. They made those recommendations, they compiled those recommendations into a series of numerical bullets, as you call it, highlighted portions, as well as other detailed paragraphs to back up what they are proposing. And I'd like to go to one of their recommendations, that is to say, recommendation number 63. Let me turn this sideways, please. Turn my telephone device sideways so I can. Okay, let me see. Yeah, correct. Now I need to make it a little smaller so it fits good enough on the device. Okay. Thank you for indulging me in babbling in your ears, while I'm trying to get the material set up for me to be able to read. Recommendation number 63 says establishment of the executive authority. Now, I'll just go ahead and read what they have, and then I'll just contextualize that with what the Constitution says. Okay? So they're saying under 63.1, their recommendation, they're saying repeal section 36 of the Constitution of Belize, subsection 1, and replace it with the executive authority of Belize is vested in the Prime Minister, who is head of state. Does anybody in Belize understand or believe that the Prime Minister name is King Charles? It sounds like I'm trying to be funny, right? It sounds like I'm trying to be funny. Let me read again what is stated here, okay? So you can see how not funny I am. And then I'll explain to you. Recommendation number 63, subsection 1 reads as follows. For emphasis, I'm rereading it. Repeal section 36(1) of the Constitution of Belize and replace it with, open quotation, the executive authority of Belize is vested in the Prime Minister, who is head of state and head of government, who chooses 12 ministers who shall form the cabinet. There's more that I need to read as part of that same recommendation there, but before I get too far ahead of the process and uh, I just want to read from the Constitution. I'm picking up another different device now, which is this one here is an electronic copy of the Belize Constitution. And I want to go to section 36. I'm currently at what? Let me see where I'm at right now. 34. Okay, let me go two more sections over. Need to go to section 36. Let me see. Here we go. Okay. 37, 37, 36. Okay. Now, let me read for you what the Constitution, I believe, says in regards to what they were stipulating in their recommendation. I'll read it. The Constitution of Belize, Part 5, under the subcategory of the Executive of Belize. The same reference that they cited, Section 36(1), reads as follows. The executive authority of Belize is vested in Her or His Majesty. The current His Majesty name is who? King Charles, right? Not the Prime Minister of Belize, as is being stipulated by their recommendation. That is to say, somehow or another, the Prime Minister of Belize is going to go and grab the authority and powers of King Charles as the chief executive of Belize, head of state, and appropriate those powers unto himself. I don't know Mr. Bridgenia to have that large of a, fortitude to undertake those matters as squarely and as effectively as is being pointed out there. Okay? I don't know if anybody in Belize believes that the man have the waivers to do that. That is, to step up to the head of state and tell the head of state, boy, you're out of here, turn over the powers and get on with your business, move on. Now, I'm laughing because I know what I'm trying to say. I may not be using the correct word or terms or I may not even be conveying the right attitude in terms of laughing about this matter because I understand the full context of it and the ludicrousness of it. And therefore, it's messing with my mind. So I'm laughing not to cry, basically. I'll cry for these idiots that are, trying to perpetrate what you'd call a seditious act or proposing to commit a seditious act or giving the people the impression that they have the ability to commit this seditious act. With what powers and under what circumstances, I don't know. Let's let me proceed a little further. So it says, the executive authority of Belize is vested in His Majesty, previously Her Majesty. That's what the Constitution says. If you don't like it, change it. But you cannot change it outside of the process, procedures, and protocols and practices that are established already as a means or basis for making those changes. You cannot be arbitrary and capricious with your intentions. That's why people lose their heads sometimes and lose their lives. Subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised on behalf of Her Majesty or His Majesty by the Governor General of Belize, either directly or through officers subordinate to him or her. I'm going back and forth between these two documents. Every time I make the change, I'll explain because I want people to at least try and get a grab the context and the gravitas and the gravity of these underhanded proposals, okay, or recommendations, so to speak. Recommendation 63, I'm back now reading from the proposed changes that was submitted to the Prime Minister by the PCC. Repeal Section 36(1), which I just read just now, that says the executive authority of Belize is vested in Her Majesty or His Majesty. They want to repeal that now. That is to say, they're going to make a law to take away the powers and authority from the head of state. Bunch of knuckleheads. And it says here, and replace it with the executive of Belize. The executive authority of Belize is vested in the Prime Minister, who is head of state, by whose declaration, and by whose authority, and by whose ascension. Any law that they make has to be assented by the head of state and or by the Governor General on behalf of the head of state. That's why I was laughing a little earlier. How can these knuckleheads pretend to make a law that will tell the Governor General she has to assent to that law, which for all intents and purposes to wipe out the existence in the Constitution of her office and the office and authority and powers vested in the head of state, because these guys have decided that they want to assume those powers onto themselves. A bunch of clowns, but they pretend that they don't. You see, I'm reading these things. I'm not the only person that has the ability to be able to read these things to you, the general public, okay? These people in cabinet and in our government have dozens of lawyers available to them. They have some of the most high-priced lawyers in the country that should be able to, and could be able to advise them better than what I'm saying here on this particular show or in any of our previous shows, because those individuals are senior counsels with decades of experience behind them in terms of dealing with constitutional matters and should be much more capable and prepared to give them the proper advice, rather than for them to have to hear what I'm saying and dismissing what I'm saying because I'm not any of their powerful attorneys. Why? Their powerful attorneys are not telling them what they need to hear or need to know. Otherwise, they'll disassociate from them, like the Prime Minister did to Mr. Jarosowicz. Okay? He asked Mr. Jarosowicz, the top international lawyer, to give him a legal recommendation in regards to the political affairs, sordid political affairs, by the way, And because the lawyer dared to give him the correct legal advice that didn't square with his expectation or what he wanted to hear, he went ahead and he commented on the man's work as saying that the lawyer did not understand his assignment. That is, that his assignment to the man, maybe he never clarified his assignment in the first place. He never tell the man that he want the man give not a proper or correct legal advice, but give him an advice so that he can rely on that advice, a phony advice, to say that he, the Prime Minister, relying on the phony advice given by them, Mr. Jerusevich, if Mr. Jerusevich was supposed to understand the certainness or the legality of what the Prime Minister was proposing, then the Prime Minister would not have had to go and get a second advice from Mr. Mendes. But Mr. Mendes understood the Prime Minister's request, and he gave him the answer that he wanted. Why? Because Mr. Mendes was privy to Mr. Jurasevich's recommendations. And he was privy to the fact that the Prime Minister was not pleased with that previous recommendation. So he took the previous recommendation by Mr. Jurasevich, which was a proper legal advice, turned around and gave a more bogus advice. And the Prime Minister ran with that, only to get himself tripped up, to be embarrassed by us and others, to indicate to him that he was acting contrary to good order and good governance, and that he had his justifiable reason why he was attempting to bamboozle the people of Belize into accepting the Portico undertaking, which was part of his, I called it, one of his babies. And we pointed out to him and connected the dots, and he got embarrassed to the point that the Portico issue was said to have gone to the House of Representatives, and he tore up the Portico documents in the House, which was a copy, not the original, because the original is still there with him. And a few days later, he came back and said, "Oh, well, they're working on the original." That's the kind of jackal and hyenas that we are dealing with, okay? But I'm straying a little bit away from the focus. That is to say, if these gentlemen were to be successful at declaring himself in control of the powers that is currently vested in the present head of state, and somehow or another, by osmosis or some miracle, they end up acquiring those powers unto themselves, how much more onerous are they going to be than they are today, when they don't have that power? And their present conduct, behavior, their track record shows. We didn't tell them to behave that kind of way. They behave the kind of way they are. So nobody should fault us for having to comment on their negative and treacherous behavior. I want to get back to. Let me get stuff here cleared up. I'm making commentaries, and I would like to get back to the essence of the recommendations. Okay. So in the first instance, they're declaring that, as a part of their recommendation 63, that they want to repeal Section 36(1) and replace it with the executive authority of Belize is vested in the Prime Minister, who shall be head of state. In their mind, I guess, it's like the discovery of America by Columbus. He discovered in his mind, and in the Europeans' their mind, what they didn't know. They became aware of, finally. So that was a discovery for them, based on the level of their ignorance. Here we have these jackals trying to bamboozle us into believing that because they go to the House, propose a law. Well, they haven't gone to the House yet to propose the law, by the way. They went to the House to get some money to finance this undertaking by the PCC, and the PCC recommendation number 63 is telling them abolish the position of the head of state for all intents and purposes and accrue those powers or aggregate those powers into the purview of the prime minister, who shall be head of state and head of government. And that's not what the Constitution says, okay? So there's a conflict there. And that's a major conflict. That's one of the things that they didn't want people to know about, which is why they turned around and made 100 different recommendations. They could have come to the people with that one particular recommendation right there. Less than 50 words. Okay? And ask the people if they wanted to make those changes in the Constitution, put it on a referendum ballot, and let the people decide. And when the people decide, then they can take that as a bucketive from the people to say, well, the people would like for us to request that the head of state cease to exist and perform as our head of state because we are now interested in electing our own head of state, a local head of state, and we want to accrue those powers. So negotiate to get those powers assented to us. There would be nothing wrong with that. It's an effort. I'm not saying that they would be successful or that is the only way for them to do it or go about achieving that objective. But they're not explaining none of these things to the people that I'm trying to say right here. No, it shouldn't fall on my shoulder to have to dissect this process, explain this process, when they have already spent millions of dollars and have additional millions of dollars to adequately inform or educate or enlighten or elucidate the people. That's my complaint. Do what is right. Don't take a salary from us and then turn around and stab us in the back by disabusing us of our rights and our legal defense. I'll go on to read a little bit more of this same number six, recommendation number 63. I need to make this a little bit smaller, but not too small. I don't want to exaggerate it. Yeah, I need to make just a teeny bit smaller. Okay. So I'll read a little bit further on. It says under subsection subsection 3 of recommendation. No, this is the I'm reading the Constitution. As I said before, I'll be going back and forth between these two set of documents, right? So I constantly will have to clarify or explain or at least notify when I'm making changes to the in terms of the change or switching from one document to the next, because it is a teachable moment, and those of you who are listening to our program currently and will be listening to it later on or after may not necessarily be privy to or have copies of these documents that I'm referring to. So I got to be careful that I'm not making a reference and making that reference as if I'm speaking directly from the Constitution, when in fact I'm actually speaking from the proposals. Okay? So bear with me. I come bearing good tidings and gifts. I look like a Santa tonight. I dress like one, or if maybe not even a Santa, at least like an elf. So please bear with me, okay? Please take your patience and let's go for this ride and see what you can get out of the process. Because at the end of the day, if you were to get as much of it, you'll be in a much better position to defend your country, your country's constitution, and your own rights and the rights of your other families and your future generations. Because if these guys succeed at what they're attempting to do, if you think we have issues or problems right now, God forbid that they succeed. Because we'll realize then, after the fact, probably when it's too late, that we have not an option in order to reverse course and or to stop them from implementing some of these bogus laws that they have been trying to put in place. Uh, Subsection 3 reads as follows in the Constitution of Belize under Section 36. It says, nothing in this section shall prevent the National Assembly from conferring functions on persons or authorities other than the Governor General. Okay? Other than the Governor General, the House of Representatives, the legislature, has no power and authority to mandate and or to demand that the Governor General accept any authority from them. Why? They are the one that has to come and ask for ascension of powers and authority from the Governor General, who holds the reservoir of the executive powers of Belize on behalf of the head of state. Is that clear enough? I hope I don't need to explain that further, or at least maybe in any other with any other extra words. I hope that that's clear enough and good enough for other people to take and run. Because I'm reading it from the Constitution, and that's what it says. That's what it's supposed to be. Of course, we do know that that's not necessarily how it is being practiced or how they behave. Which is why I said initially after I read the scriptures, I said there is a problem. That particular scripture that I read says that we're not supposed to pass judgment. But how else do we deal with the issues of governance in our country if we're not paying attention to what the government is doing, and when they fall flat on their face or attempt to misuse and abuse us or take away our rights, for us to have the ability to be able to speak truth to power? So we have to not conflate and make sure that we keep things in proper sequence and context. Uh, Nothing in this section shall prevent the National Assembly from uh, from conferring functions on persons or authorities other than the Governor General. So they have no powers and authority over the Governor General. They cannot dis, dispose of the Governor General's position. That is also found in another part of the Constitution. It says under Section 37, 1, it says, there shall be a Prime Minister of Belize who shall be appointed by the Governor General. It doesn't say there shall be a Prime Minister who shall appoint himself, or that the legislator is going to write a document and give it to the Prime Minister and say, well, you're now, by virtue of us writing this and authorizing it to you, you're now a replacement for the Governor General, from whom they would first have to get a sign off under the seal of the very same Governor General, for that Governor General to eviscerate her authorities and powers and transfer them to the Prime Minister, for the Prime Minister then to become head of state, because then the Governor General will be committing sedition against her boss, at whose pleasure she serves, which is the Governor General serves at the pleasure of the head of state, who can sack her or remove her, without any questions asked. So likewise, does the Governor General have the power to sack and remove the Prime Minister? She have the powers to authorize the Prime Minister to exercise some of the powers vested in her, as I read earlier. Let me go back and read it. The executive authority of Belize, according to the Constitution, is vested in Her Majesty or His Majesty, and subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised on behalf of Her Majesty or His Majesty by the Governor General, as I just previously stipulated, either directly or through officers subordinate to him or her. So then, how can the subordinate officers, being the members of Congress, write a law to tell the Governor General her post, her position, her authority or powers are not valid, viable, and or they're being sacked or taken away from her, and also that the powers of her boss is being taken away from her boss. When they need the ascension of that very same Governor General and that head of state to first assent to any such proposals. Are these guys not acting like clowns in a circus, amusing everybody else that's looking and laughing at them? When in fact all they're trying to do is bamboozle their way through the process? Do they not understand what is it that I'm reading here that they could read themselves? But yet we have the travesty of these guys paying millions of dollars to a commission that they put together for them to hide behind the clothes of the commission because the prime minister have no clothes. Or I could have said it the way it's always said. The emperor have no clothes, right? This one and the same. The prime minister wants to be an emperor. He wants to be the head of state. Soon you will hear him say, you know what? We need to turn Belize into a republic because I want to be a president. I mean, if the man can't cross the first threshold, how are they going to get to the second threshold? You know, I would venture to be obnoxious enough to say that it seems like they don't have enough comprehension of the English language to be able to read what I'm reading here, that I'm reading to you, the general public, and you, the general public, don't have access to the documents, but at least have the ability and the comprehension capability to understand what is it that I'm trying to say. Even though I may not be saying it in the correct words, adequate words, or proper words. Of course, the part that I'm reading from the Constitution is black and white. So it's not like I'm interjecting too much there, other than the extra comments that I make besides what I read. And, for example, when I read their recommendations, right? So let me read another little part of the same recommendations, okay? I'm switching out now again from the Constitution of Belize back to the recommendations that these jackals are making. Because one of these days, they're going to come to us and ask us, do we agree for them to go forward? Or they're going to go to the House of Representatives themselves without coming to us and pass a law or pass some kind of act and pretend that by virtue of the fact that if they can get all 100% of the members of Congress to vote in favor of that law, that law can become legal, lawful, and constitutional as well, without the ascension of the head of state or the governor general. In other words, they're going to declare a law to be a law when, as the legislator, they have no such powers. The power to declare a law legal, lawful, and constitutional rests in the judiciary, not in the legislative. That's why we have three branches of government. So even though the prime minister may want to inherit or assume those powers, he have no way of getting those powers other than going through the head of state, to have the head of state acquiesce to relinquish those powers. But apparently these knuckleheads don't even recognize that, understand that, as if they care anyhow. They probably recognize it, they probably understand it, and they just don't care because they're going to do it the way they want to do it, and how they're going to do it, according to them, it's going to happen. And when it happens like that, it's going to be accepted as being legal, lawful, and constitutional because they decree it to be a bunch of idiots. That's how you end up with revolutions in countries. Okay, when people become so self-engrossed in power to the point that they become drunk with that power, and they lose their marbles. They lose touch with reality. I proceed to read subsection 2 of section 63, or recommendation section is recommendation number 63, that is proposed by the PCC Commission. That is to say, repeal section 36.2 and replace it with, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised on behalf of the people of Belize, either directly or through the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, ministers, deputy ministers, or officers subordinate to the Prime Minister. So they're standing the Constitution on its head now, and they're going to declare that what was isn't anymore because they say so. I guess they're probably going to go ahead and go to the Governor General house, hold the Governor General hostage, and force her to sign those decrees. And when the head of state dispatched the Governor General for seditious activities on behalf of the knuckleheads in government, if she were to accede to their request or demand, even if they put a gun to her head, and you know, she would be vanquished. And another person, because she serves at the pleasure of the head of state, and the head of state could appoint somebody else. So until they can get the acquiescence, like I said, of the head of state, their current undertaking is null and void and amounts to zero, amounts to a travesty, a wasted effort, unless they're going to go ahead and physically overthrow the system, because they cannot overthrow the system through legal process. They don't understand or know enough, apparently, of how to go about doing what they're trying to achieve. So they will waste our time and their time and our resources and take us down a road. Let me get out of that part. Um, they also propose here to repeal section 36.3, which I haven't read, and I'm not going to read because, you know, there's too much to be read. It says, and repeal section 37 all the way to section 49. That is to say, they're talking about repealing the whole of that particular part of the Constitution. That is to say, the whole of Part 5 under the executive. Okay? So then, okay, I shouldn't ask a redundant question. Let me leave it alone. Uh, I'd like to read from the Constitution a little bit more of what section, just a minute. Oops. Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, I found it again. I lost the reference of the Constitution. Mm, no, I gotta size it back again and fix it. Under Section 36 of the Constitution of Belize, subsection 1, it says, there shall be a Prime Minister of Belize, who shall be appointed by the Governor General, and not by the Prime Minister himself, or not be appointed by the Congress, or anybody in the legislature, or by the judiciary. In other words, there's no other allowance for the appointment of a prime minister in our system of governance, unless they're going to overthrow the whole system, which is what I was saying earlier. There's no allowance for any three parts or the three branches of government to provide for a prime minister, other than the prime minister being appointed by the governor general. That's how it's written here. There shall be a prime minister of Belize who shall be appointed by the governor general. That is what section 37, subsection 1 reads. And subsection 2 reads the following. Whenever the governor general has occasion to appoint a prime minister, he shall appoint a member of the House of Representatives who is the leader of the political party which commands the support of the majority of the members of that house. And if no political party has an overall majority, he or she, the governor general, shall appoint a member of the house who appears to him or her likely to command the support of the majority of the members of that house. Reading further under that same subsection, it says, provided that no person shall be appointed as prime minister who has previously held the office of the prime minister for 3 parliamentary terms, as in the case of former prime minister Mr. Uh, Dean Oliver Barrow. Okay, so we as Belizeans know that we had a former prime minister who served 3 terms and was termed out, and that's what this part of the Constitution is referring to. So it's not unlikely that Mr. Brisenian would like to stay around and hope to win another um, election to become prime minister for a 3rd time, after which he'll be termed out as well. But either consecutively or in aggregate, and for this purpose, the the, the expression parliamentary term shall mean the period commencing on the date of the first sitting of the National Assembly after a general election and expiring at the date of the next ensuing dissolution of the National Assembly. Subsection 3 reads as follows. Okay, so there's a whole lot more to be read there, okay? There's a whole lot of details and a lot of conditions and further explanations and categorizations. But they want to abolish all of that because they don't want to hear about it, especially the last part that I just read. In fact, they don't want to hear none of it, which is why they're proposing eviscerate the whole thing. Take it out of the Constitution altogether, the whole of that part of the Constitution. All those sections, all those subsections, all those paragraphs, vanish it, eviscerate it. That's the recommendation of these knuckleheads. Okay? Let me read another part just for the hell of it, like we say. The Governor General shall, now this part, they probably don't want to hear about as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and read it, whether they like it or not. Okay. Subsection 4 says, the Governor General shall remove the Prime Minister from office if resolutions of no confidence in the government is passed by the House of Representatives, and the Prime Minister does not, within 7 days, either resign from his office or advise the Governor General to dissolve the National Assembly. Does anyone really interpret such powers of the Governor General to remove a Prime Minister as being the Governor General just being a figurehead? Does no one understand the seriousness and significance or gravity of that level of exercise of power? As I said before, in order for the Prime Minister to become a Prime Minister, he has to be elected by his majority. And if the Governor General sees that he does not command a majority, he can refuse to assent to have him become Prime Minister or to authorize him to become Prime Minister, because those powers are vested in the head of state. The executive power of police is vested in the head of state. And some subordinate officers of the head of state may exercise some of those executive powers according to constitutional requirements or principles, process, practices, and procedures. So when these jackals are making these kind of outlandish proposals here in recommendation 63 and 64 and all the others that I've commented on before, it's like they're living, in some part of outer space. They're not dealing with the reality of what's going on here on this earth. And specifically as regards to what's going on in Belize and the affairs of Belize. They want to run Belize by any thought that flashes out of their head from day to day. And does not comport to constitutional prescripts. They are required to perform certain functions, do certain things, or abide by certain rules, regulations, and laws. They don't want to hear that. The Governor General shall remove the Prime Minister from office if a resolution of no confidence in the government is passed by the House of Representatives and the Prime Minister does not within 7 days either resign from his office or advise the Governor General to dissolve the National Assembly. I read that twice just now in a row for emphasis, because the Governor General, like I keep saying, as part of these reviews, is not a figurehead. Our people need to understand and learn that what these jackals keep telling them serves their interest to misinform the people and to get the people to believe things that are not so, in order for them to have their own way with the people. I'll read on subsection 5. The office of Prime Minister shall also become vacant, as in the case of paragraph A, which I'll read right now, if the holder of the office ceases to be a member of the House of Representatives, otherwise than by reason of the dissolution of the National Assembly, or, as in paragraph B, if by virtue of section 59, subsection 3 of this Constitution, he is required to cease to perform his functions as a member of the House of Representatives, or, as in the case of section C, paragraph C, if he is informed by the Governor General that the Governor General is, in accordance with subsection 2 or 3 of this section, about to reappoint him as Prime Minister or to appoint another person as Prime Minister. And yet, some uninformed people would say, oh, the Governor General is just a figurehead. She's there to rubber stamp anything the Prime Minister wants. I wish they would just read this very same thing that I'm reading and hope that they would understand it and believe it. Because they could probably read it, understand it, and still don't believe it, or even believing it, but refuse to accept it and want to do otherwise. There are a lot of other possibilities. But at the end of the day, it is good to learn and know what you didn't born knowing. And that would fall into a very good uh, position for some of those people who are hell bent on misinforming the general populace. And I'll read subsection 6 also, because that constitutes part of what is it that they are trying to eviscerate or get rid of. In exercise of the powers conferred on him or her by this section, the Governor General shall act in his own deliberate judgment. But yet they say she's a figurehead or he's a figurehead. She can implement and or act within her own personal or deliberate personal judgment as regards to anything that has to do with the Prime Minister or any other minister subordinate to the Governor General. Okay? It is important for these teachable moments in regards to our constitution of Belize for our people and especially the younger generations coming up to learn and know these things, because if they don't know, they will not be in a position to be able to defend the Constitution, which defends them. And these knuckleheads and shysters that we have filling up their pocket will twist and bend the laws and ignore the laws when need be in order for them to continue riding roughshod over the country and its population while they continue what I term as the big hustle. Under Section 38 of the Constitution of Belize, it says, the Governor General shall, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, designate a minister as Deputy Prime Minister, to whom the Prime Minister may from time to time deputy such as his functions as he may specify. That is in the case of Mr. Cordell Hyde, who is our current Deputy Prime Minister. And it applies to all previous Deputy Prime Minister and probably future Deputy Prime Minister until there's a change in our Constitution. Under Section 39, subsection 1, whenever the Prime Minister is absent from Belize or is by reason of illness unable to perform functions conferred on him, remember, those functions are conferred on him, not by the House of Representatives, nor does he confer those functions onto himself. Those functions are confirmed by the Governor General. They are conferred and confirmed on him in absence with this Constitution. These functions, other than the functions conferred by this section, shall be performed by the Deputy Prime Minister, or in the absence of the Deputy Prime Minister, or if he too, the Deputy Prime Minister, or she, whether it's a man or woman, we have not had a Deputy Prime Minister who is a woman yet, but the Constitution should read, as a matter of housekeeping, it should read, he or she is likewise unable to perform those functions by such other minister as the Governor General, not the Prime Minister, may authorize for that purpose. So the Prime Minister goes to the Governor General to get assented to become Prime Minister. The Prime Minister recommends to the Governor General someone of his preference or choice or confidence to be his second in command, that is to say, deputy prime minister, and also the prime minister recommends the various individuals who become ministers of different government departments, and they all have to go and get assented to in order to exercise those powers of governance through the ascension of the Governor General. As it says, as the Governor General may authorize for that purpose. I have about 14 more minutes to go, so I'll try and do at least one more of these recommendations, hopefully. But I'm just trying to get through reading the rest of what is it that these people were trying to hide when they decide to eviscerate. And it's quite a bit. I'm telling you, it's quite a bit of reading. It's a lot of stuff. I don't know, maybe if I should just stay focused on this and then do on a future occasion another recommendation from the PCC. But you see the time that we're spending right here now reviewing and going through all these things that they were proposing to eviscerate. How much of what I've read so far do the people of the country understand and know, other than probably a few lawyers, some of whom don't even know as much either? But these jackals are going to propose to eviscerate the whole of it, as if it never existed, and should never be related to, in lieu of something else that is more pliable to them. It's easier for them to run the country as a dictator. They don't want to abide by the rules and the regulations, by the laws, by the Constitution. They're trying to eviscerate major sections of the Constitution. And most people are sitting down at home sucking their fingers, quite unconcerned, unaware, and some could care less. Why? They don't even have the chance to earn enough money to buy themselves a meal for the day. So they are more stressed over survival on a day-to-day basis than to learn and know the things that will keep them in a possible way of surviving. That is to know your rights, right? So people don't chance you. To know enough about the Constitution so you can understand when the government in power is misusing and abusing your rights of the Constitution, so that you can then determine whether or not you vote them back in office, rather than just go and vote them back in office every time they give you a $50 when election comes around. Because $50 can't last for 5 years for you to survive off of. They have to create jobs for you. I think in the interest of, in public interest, I think I should just continue reading on some more of this stuff. It's going to sound monotonous. Like I said, it's a lot of reading. But I think it's only fair for me to read it because there's a lot of people in Belize that doesn't have a copy of the Constitution, will never probably end up having the chance to own one themselves. And as much as they can go to the libraries or other places of research, people are, like I just commented and said, people are more interested in trying to survive from a day-to-day basis. They don't have the luxury of being able to deal with these esoteric things, these constitutional things, that is also causing them some of the harm that they are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. Because these are the things that the government take and use as a weapon against you, the people. Uh, Let me go back and finish read this other portion here, please. Please bear with me. And like I said, or I'm trying to intimate, I'm aware of the fact that it's becoming monotonous because it's a lot of stuff that people may not have heard before, or don't have the patience or the tolerance to be able to absorb it. I've been burdening you or bearing down on you for quite a while, and maybe some of you guys are already probably lost you. You're probably falling asleep, or maybe gone on to doing other things with your time because, you know, all this stuff is supposed to be taught or brought to your attention over a long period of time, not a crumb session like what I'm doing here right now. And why I'm doing it like this is because I have the sense, I have a premonition that because these guys have that document delivered to them from the PCC Commission, the Prime Minister and his members of cabinet in secret are going to go ahead and conspire, as they always do, and come out and just ram something down the throat of the Belizean people by virtue of them having a supermajority in the House. And it will be taken for granted by the people that, well, the supermajority in the House has spoken, and therefore it is the law. And some people will be inclined to accept it and follow it, when in fact it is not the law, just because all 100% of them would, including the oppositions, would probably get together and decide to make an unconstitutional law, a bastardized law, an illegal law, an unlawful law, and then still try to categorize it as a constitutional law that trumps the Constitution, because the Constitution tells you under Section 2, as I keep repeating, any other law, and when the Constitution refers to other law, it is referring to laws it's referring to the substantive laws that the House of Representatives is empowered to make. But it doesn't mean just about any arbitrary illegal law. It means lawful law, constitutional law, law that squares with the Constitution. You cannot make an unlawful law and say it's a legal law. It's unlawful, it's unlawful. If it's unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. And as Section 2 says, any other law that is inconsistent with the Constitution is null and void to the extent of its inconsistency. And these guys know that, but yet they waste your time, go to the House, make these bogus laws, put them on the book. People get hurt with it. People don't have money to challenge the unlawfulness of or the legality of some of the bogus stuff that they do. And so they end up in jail or in adverse situation for years. That's being onerous. That's being arbitrary and capricious. That's being malicious and vindictive to a population that elects you to govern them. It's crazy on its face. But I'm not saying anything new. It has happened in the past, it's happening right now, and it may continue to happen in the future. So now you have the same knucklehead vampires, just feeding at the trough and hustling for themselves, family and friends, appropriating unto themselves the assets of the country. Okay? Just let me go ahead and do some more reading, as I said then, because I was here to believe that I should just do the same thing as they're proposing, that is, to pretend that all of this that they want to recommend to be dispensed with, that I would just go ahead and dispense with it too, and not having at least some of the people hear what it was that they are trying to take away and eviscerate. They're trying to take away the laws that hamstrung them from being arbitrary and capricious and from violating our rights. Let me just go ahead and read Section 38. Okay, no, I'll skip Section 38. Not skip it, but I read it already. So let me go ahead and read Section 39, subsection 1 of the Constitution of Belize. I'm reading from the Constitution itself right now. Whenever the Prime Minister is absent from Belize or is by reason of illness unable to perform the functions conferred on him, as I said, not by himself nor by the legislator. Those functions are conferred on him in accordance with the Constitution. Those functions, other than the functions conferred by the Senate, by this section, shall be performed. And those functions are conferred, like I said, on him, the Prime Minister, who is a subordinate officer of the Governor General. The Deputy Prime Minister, or in the absence of the Deputy Prime Minister, or if he too, by a minister, by the Prime Minister or a minister, or if he too is uh, likewise unavailable to perform these functions by such other minister as the Governor General may authorize for that purpose. Subsection 2 reads, the Deputy Prime Minister shall cease to perform the functions of the Prime Minister when he is informed by the Governor General that the Prime Minister is about to remove or to resume those functions. Subsection 3 reads as follows. A minister authorized to perform the functions of the Prime Minister under Section 1B of this section shall cease to perform those functions when he is informed by the Governor General that the Deputy Prime Minister is about to assume or that the Prime Minister is about to resume those functions. So you see how many times the Governor General has authority over the subordinate officers such as the Prime Minister, other ministers, deputy ministers, and or others. Take it out of your head that the Governor General is a rubber stamp, because that's not what the Constitution says or implies. The powers of the Governor General under this section shall be exercised by him or her in accordance to the advice of the Prime Minister, provided that if the Governor General, acting in his own deliberate or her own deliberate judgment, considers that it is impracticable to obtain the advice of the Prime Minister owing to the absence or illness of the Prime Minister, he, the Governor General, may exercise those powers, or he may appoint someone temporarily, either the Deputy Prime Minister or some other subordinate minister or individual. As in paragraph A, for example, in accordance with the advice of the Deputy Prime Minister, or as in paragraph B, if he likewise considers it impracticable to obtain the advice of the Deputy Prime Minister in his own deliberate judgment. Um, I would say that that should be the end of that should be the end of um, this that part of the presentation for tonight, because Section 40 of the Constitution of Belize deals with ministers of government, but it's quite a bit of reading as well, and we don't want to get into anything that we will not be able to complete. That is too far. Um, they're proposing to eviscerate all of what I read to you tonight with one stroke, and I'll read that stroke again to you. And all of what I read is about not even half of what um, part part four, yeah, what part four was about. That they wanted to eviscerate the whole thing from section 30 all the way through section 49. Okay, which is a lot of reading and a lot of information and a lot of circumstances and conditions that they are trying to get rid of. And they just globally said, just get rid of the whole of that part of the Constitution without even informing the people what it's all about or what is it that they're trying to get rid of. How much better is the Constitution going to be, or how much worse is it going to be? We are dealing with honest people. And like I said, I just wanted to quickly, at the end of the program right now, go back and stipulate for emphasis what they're recommending here under 63 and 64. I don't want to read the whole. the whole thing. I'll just read a little part of it and of 63 and a little part of 64, just for context. Recommendation 63 says establishment of the executive authority, which is already established under the present head of state, but they want to create a different head of state that one of them will become. 63.1 reads as follows again for emphasis. Repeal section 12.6.1 and replace with the executive authority of Belize is vested in the Prime Minister, according to them, and not vested in the head of state as according to what the Constitution said. We went through all of that already. I'm just summarizing now for further clarity. Okay. I'll go and read the part of section 64. Recommendation number 64 to establish the direct election of the Prime Minister. No, I won't deal with that. That's another big subject that we have to get into a lot of details next time we meet on that particular constitutional review teachable moment. We will probably deal with that particular one because it takes up a lot of reading and it also takes up a lot of commentary. And for tonight, we have come to the end of our program. I hope that I've done justice to your valuable time, that you are probably a bit more informed than you were before tonight's program. And if you think it necessary or possible, you can just go back and download it again and listen to it. You can make your critiques, you can make your corrections where you think that a correction needs to be made or an observation that needs to be taken into consideration. I am not the ultimate arbiter of our constitutional prerogatives or constitutional rule of law. I'm just someone who is cognizant enough and capable enough to make a presentation in the hopes that because others are not doing it, that at least the general public will derive some positive public benefit from my endeavor. And part of the reason why I undertook this endeavor is because the government spent a few $1 million pretending to and promising to undertake an educational campaign to help the people learn a little bit about the Constitution, since they had a survey that indicated that 98% of the population of the country were unfamiliar with the Constitution, did not have a Constitution available to them, and some of the things that they wanted to change needed to be fleshed out and or the people needed to be appraised of. They completed their exercise apparently according to them without having achieved those objectives or having fulfilled those promises and obligations that they had to the public, and are moving forward with the same attempt to bamboozle the public and bamboozle their way and to end up with a constitution that is more pliable to them, turning the country into a future Republic of Belize to be governed by autocratic means. That's intolerable, and I will not sit idle by without at least making an attempt to inform the public of their objectives and to do these teachable moments in regards to the Constitution so people can know exactly, or at least get a little bit more awareness and knowledge as to what is it that is at stake. Again, we will be having these discussions going forward. It's 100 and odd different recommendations that they made. We're at 60 odd of them right now, number 60 odd, 63, 64, thereabout. And we have skipped a few of them in between earlier because we were hoping to go back to those since we were trying to cover the most egregious parts that they were trying to violate. And I'm almost 5 minutes beyond my scheduled time, so I'll just like to say thank you very much for your time spared. Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad, and others, and wishing you Merry Christmas. I'm looking forward to a happy New Year. Ho, 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 ho. Good night. Bye bye.